I used to put up these massive spreadsheets, like completely unreadable things, just to show like, hey, I'm doing something. But obviously that's not an
Yep.
effective way to get across anything, which I quickly learned. So the way that I do it, we have monthly meetings. We have a weekly catch up with the marketing team, just about what we've done last week, what's coming up next week. And that's quite effective because it means that in like a tight little community, we have an idea of what everyone's doing. I then have my monthly meetings with the wider team, including the marketing team and the wider business.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, your go-to guide to solving your biggest retail social media marketing challenges authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode is an honest and frank look at what marketers go through, from awful algorithms to terrific trends and ideas that you can apply to your own business. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, where we're digging into the challenges, the successes, and the stories of social media and community professionals in the industry, just like you. Subscribe to gain valuable insights that you'll be able to apply to your own work and social presence from each and every episode. Now, every social media manager knows this feeling. You post what seems like the perfect piece of content. The likes start rolling in, the comments are flowing, and your reach is through the roof. But then comes the dreaded question from leadership. What does that mean for our bottom line? For too many retail brands, social media success is still measured by vanity metrics, likes, followers, and reach. But what if there was a better way? What if you could definitively show your social media efforts are driving real business results? What if you could transform your social media presence from a cost center into a revenue generating machine? Well, that's exactly what our guest today has accomplished. Katie Murphy, head of social media at Early Years Resources, has revolutionized how her company approaches social media measurement, driving a stunning 341% increase in direct revenue from social media and a 236% increase in conversions. Today, she's here to share how she did it and how you can too. Hey, Katie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad you could come here. Before we dive into the metrics, tell us a bit about Early Years Resources and the role that social media plays in your overall marketing strategy.
Yeah, so Early Years Resources is a leading supplier of educational resources. We're based up in Manchester in the UK. So we sell resources to early years professionals, teachers, schools, and in going into 2025, we're working on high schools, older students, maybe some after school clubs as well. So social media is quite central to our marketing strategy because it enables us to reach the teachers that we're trying to connect with. So I don't know how it is in the US, but over in the UK, typically our company's been going for 32, 33 years nearly. So typically our marketing efforts used to be we'd put a catalogue together and we'd send it through the mailbox of schools. But the catalogue typically gets stopped at reception. So the receptionist has kind of the power in terms of like, will the catalogue be distributed amongst the people that we want to buy from us? So social media kind of gets around that a little bit because it enables us to connect with educators and parents in a way that a catalogue probably couldn't on the platforms that they use daily. So it serves as quite a powerful channel for brand awareness, community engagement, and driving traffic to our website as well, which complements our broader digital and offline marketing efforts.
That's fascinating. It is a little bit different here in the US. I know teachers in schools buy some of their own supplies, but I also know their budgets are too low for them to get all the supplies that they need. So they end up emailing parents before the school starts, hey, could you bring all these things with your students? So I could see them following a brand like yours and looking to you for guidance on specifically which supplies and which brands and things that they need.
Yeah, that's a trend that we're seeing in the UK as well, with teachers buying their own supplies. And again, they don't have necessarily the budget to be able to do things like that. So it's nice to be able to connect with them on social media as well and answer any questions that they might have, let them know that we have free resources for them as well, and just generally have that kind of supportive networking available to them.
Yeah. So when you first started to try to connect your social media efforts with some actual business results, right? What were some of the initial challenges that you ran into?
Yeah, so I think one of the key challenges was probably tracking issues, so difficult linking those social media efforts directly to sales or leads. I think a lot of social media professionals will probably concur with that. It's
Mm.
difficult to say, oh, this sale directly came from this organic post, because how would you know? There was also maybe a lack of awareness as to what social media could do, or maybe focusing too much on the likes and the follows, which didn't necessarily impact the overall business. And then things like understanding the customer journey, like identifying how social media then influence purchasing decisions as well.
Got it. And I'd imagine that that required then a lot of conversations um, with management, a lot of education, perhaps, of them to try and help them understand what the real purpose it was for
Yeah.
social media. Because your point, a lot of them don't quite understand what social
Mhm.
media is for.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So after going through that, you've achieved some truly remarkable revenue growth through social media. What were some of the first steps that you took to shift then from tracking those vanity metrics to measuring, what you and I would consider real business impact?
I will say first, it takes a village. It's not just me. I do have
Yeah.
our content exec who's just lovely, and we do have a small but mighty marketing team who always they put so much effort into everything. So I think teamwork is the main thing, and aligning our goals amongst each other to drive overall business efforts. In terms of social media, I think we'd already introduced before I got there 3 years ago. We'd already introduced conversion tracking through pixels, such as the Facebook pixel, Google Analytics, to measure that ROI effectively. Recently, it feels like the years go too fast, but I think maybe a year and a half ago we introduced the Pinterest pixel as well, because I started advertising on there. One of the problems was a lack of consistency before I got there. So with paid media specifically. So some months, looking back on what people had done before, there were months where there was a lot of spend, and then the following month they'd spend maybe £20, which is not for the
Oh
whole
my
month.
gosh.
I know.
Wow.
So again, small company, it's difficult to to have someone purely focused on one thing when you're running quite a tight ship, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal. It's just that, yeah, it was probably difficult to have one person focus directly on that. So there was a lack of consistency. So one of the first steps was setting out an actual strategy for seeing where high spend periods were for schools, teachers, etc., and then aligning our paid strategy to those periods to then also complement our organic strategy. So I think things like, for us, high spend periods typically for maybe a retail brand would probably be like the Christmas period, Valentine's Day for some brands. I don't know. For schools, it's set out at schools in the UK. It's set out slightly different because the school will get a set budget for the year, and so every April, and so they have that money to spend. And usually the first 3 months of the year, January through March, they have that spend still. So it ends up being a period of a lot of buying,
Yeah,
basically.
high spend.
High spend. Just words came out of my brain. A period of high spend. So those are the months that we focused on. That ended up being the months that I was focusing on with the paid media. So again, that complements our organic strategy as well. I think one of the first things that we did was set clear objectives as well. Like, what do we want to do with this? Is our job to get people to the website? Do we just want anyone to the website? Obviously not. Or do we want those like high conversion customers? Do we want people who spend a lot? So that was all part of it. And then again, always aligning those goals with the broader business objectives. And then kind of, I don't know if it's a simple step, but implementing UTM tracking to monitor how specific posts actually impacted campaigns and influenced traffic and conversions. So you've got obviously your UTM tags on like Facebook ads or whatever, but it also implemented them into like organic posts where just trying to get people to the blog just to then at the end of the month be like, this post managed to get people to the website, and you can see directly because of this exact link. So there was a lot of small steps, I think, but ended up having a pretty big impact in terms of how I could report.
The UTM tracking is huge because, to your earlier point, if you're not doing UTM parameter tracking, then that means you have no idea if a link shared in a post or a comment or a direct message does anything, because Google Analytics won't tell us. It won't differentiate the use of a specific link. It just says, hey, here's Facebook traffic. Hope it was great. We have no idea. So for those listening, if you're not familiar, UTM codes are little parameters that you add to a link. It just lengthens the link. The link still works the same for the end user, but those codes are read by Google Analytics, and they can tell Google Analytics what the campaign is, what the source, if it's Facebook or X or LinkedIn, what the medium is, if it's social media or email or private messaging. And this was something that actually one of our Agorapulse customers came to us several years ago. She was managing social media for another UK company called Brayola. And she was talking to our CEO, and she was complaining about the fact that when she sent out an email, every link is automatically tracked. When she does paid advertising, every single link is automatically tracked. But when she posts content through Agorapulse, the links weren't tracked. And this was the same pretty much with every social media tool. So we implemented automatic UTM parameters added to every single link, whether it's a scheduled post or a comment or a direct message. And then we integrated with Google Analytics so that we could pull all that data in from Google Analytics and show you, yeah, you know what? It was this direct message that you sent last month that resulted in a purchase. So huge point. I'm glad you brought that up. Just to kind of level set for a second, because we've been talking about both paid and organic social media. What platforms are you actually actively using, and which are you using for organic versus paid, if there's a difference?
Almost all of them. So we're on Facebook, both organically and paid, Pinterest, organic and paid, Instagram, TikTok. I tried TikTok advertising for a little bit. I think I'm going to bring that back in 2025. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Blue Sky now.
Got to.
And Threads as well, although
And
it's
Threads.
not something that I'm like actively using, but just to be on there, I guess. We're not on X.
That right there that's the challenge of being a social media manager today, right? There's just so many platforms.
Much.
We're recording this early December. I just finished a webinar with Threads this morning because we're supporting Threads now at Agorapulse. I'm sure we're going to support Blue Sky soon. It's a lot to keep up with, so I can appreciate where you're coming from there. Could you walk us through how you're approaching measurement, whether that's a whole framework or you're using reports? What metrics do you track now, maybe that you weren't tracking before?
So in terms of metrics that we track, my two biggest goals as a social media manager are brand awareness and traffic, and revenue and conversions is kind of part of that, but it's not like social media for our company isn't the main source of conversions. So in terms of awareness metrics, it's including reach and follower growth. Controversially, I do think those vanity metrics do have an impact for social media. I think a strong follow account and a high like to post ratio actually does have that positive first impression for users. It kind of signals credibility and trustworthiness for new visitors. Those kind of metrics can maybe encourage them to explore further or engage with the company as well. So those likes and follows act as like a gateway to maybe a deeper interaction, including conversion or revenue for the company, because they might eventually want to connect with you or visit your profile, share your posts, and then eventually could lead to purchases over time. But that's a tangent. So
No, but it's a good one. You're absolutely right.
yeah, it's controversial, I know, but I see no problem with tracking those vanity awareness metrics. So yeah, in terms of like engagement as well, we have engagement rate. I think is very important, especially when I'm working with influencers. Comments, saves, and shares as well. Shares becoming a much bigger thing as we move into the coming year. I don't know if you saw that Adam Mosseri Instagram Live talking about the importance of shares and how that's one of the biggest things for organic media. We also have traffic metrics like click-through rates, website sessions sourced from social media. So that's where I use Google Analytics mostly. The conversions, that's where I come in on like paid media. So sales attributed to social efforts. So using Facebook, like Meta ads and Pinterest ads to see how many conversions I'm getting from my paid posts. The one metric that maybe we didn't focus on previously was cost per acquisition, but I feel like that's quite important, and it feels like something that I am quite interested in, and I like to see how that goes from like I don't have loads of time to put on paid media, but I like to see how that's impacted week to week, month to month, because sometimes on Pinterest is a very low cost per acquisition, so you can really see how it jumps sometimes, and it's really interesting to think about like why that happens. But yeah, I think that's pretty central to my analysis now. And then obviously we talk about return on ad spend quite a lot as well.
It's fascinating. And I should say I could not agree more with your perspective on, quote unquote vanity metrics. It's this challenge, right, where it's really easy to focus on those. And that's why we call them vanity metrics, because some people, that's all they want to look at, because it's making them feel good that they have more followers. But if you're doing it right, the way that you are, you're paying attention to what those followers are doing next, or what those people who are engaging with posts are doing next. And in those instances, if you're doing it right, that means you're attracting the right people. And then absolutely, we want those followers to grow. Not every parent and not every educator in the entirety of UK follows your social brand. So of course, there's people out there that you want to continue to reach. And there's new parents every year as new kids come into the school system. So there's always that growth that you want to tap into. So how are you presenting all of this, these social media ROI reports and metrics, to your leadership team? Are there any particular structures or ways for reporting that you've found to be more effective than others, maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been there for 3 years now, just over. And I remember when I first started, this is my it was my second role in social media. And I was so aware that I wanted to kind of get across the importance of social media and what we were doing and show how that was impacting the business. So when I first started, I used to put up these massive spreadsheets, like completely unreadable things, just to show like, hey, I'm doing something. But obviously that's not an effective way to get across anything, which I quickly learned. So the way that I do it, we have monthly meetings. We have a weekly catch up with the marketing team, just about what we've done last week, what's coming up next week. And that's quite effective because it means that in like a tight little community, we have an idea of what everyone's doing. I then have my monthly meetings with the wider team, including the marketing team and the wider business. So in those kind of things, I find a very basic, simplified return, like an ROI kind of presentation to show what we've done, what we spent, this is our return, this is the best performing. It's quite visual, I would say. Like obviously green is good and red is bad. And then, but also have that kind of like narrative storytelling within those presentations. So explaining how the campaigns that I run and the marketing team run alongside me has aligned and affected those broader business goals as well. And then on top of those, we have quarterly strategy reviews to align efforts with the higher the leadership priorities as well. But I would definitely say one of the most effective things I've started doing is present things more visually, more graphs, less tables.
Great public service announcement for all of you listening. Do not try to give your leadership a spreadsheet full of data to understand the value of your work. Folks, we're talking with Katie Murphy about the importance of connecting social media to business impact and how to actually do it. I've got several more questions for her, but before I do, let me show you the tool thousands of social media managers use every day to track their results.
I actually can't say enough great things about the reporting with Agorapulse. I feel like that is my job security every month. My clients aren't that active on social media, which is why they have me manage their profiles for them. And when they get that report, it verifies that they're making a good investment.
The metrics downloads are so simple and easy to read, and it really helps me show where we are doing things right on social and where we need to improve.
So I think one of the main reasons why we decided to move to Agorapulse is because it's a more comprehensive, integrated tool for all of our marketing needs. So rather than what we have had to do historically with Sprout, which is use certain parts of that platform that work really well and then supplement it with other outside tools, by moving to Agorapulse, we were able to keep all of that into one technology platform, which is not only a time saver, but it also makes sure that our analytics and all of our reporting's on point because we're pulling all from the same source.
It's a really great platform for agencies. It makes it really easy to manage, but gives me really, really, really robust information that actually helps me develop better strategies for my clients and better plans of action.
So, Katie, let's talk tools. You mentioned Google Analytics. I know you mentioned some of the platforms organically. Are there any other tools that you're using to help you track and keep up with all these different metrics and reports?
So we did used to use Buffer up until very recently, just for like scheduling and very basic insights. But I actually find I get I don't know if paranoid is the right word, but I get quite into my analytics. So I like to be cross-referencing things anyway. And I do find sometimes with third-party, obviously it takes a lot more time, but I do find with third-party apps sometimes their understanding of what one analytic isn't the same as like the in-platform. And so it just gets a bit messy. Yeah. So I tend to actually just use the in-platform insights. So I really like actually TikTok's updated their insights recently, and you can have a look on web as well instead of just on your phone, which is always a treat. Instagram as well. I quite like their insights. And I mean, notoriously Meta Business Suite is not the one, but for basic insights, just to see or just to report on things like brand awareness metrics, it tends to do the job for me. Recently also as well, we've just started on TikTok Shop, which has been really interesting, and something that I hope we're going to continue into 2025. But I will say I do really like the back end of TikTok Shop. I don't know if you've tried it at all, but I like the way, similar to Google Analytics, you can track like that customer journey. Like, did they come from a specific video that you put out, or have they been to your profile and then gone to TikTok Shop? It's just, I really like it.
It's interesting because I'm not an e-commerce brand.
Mm.
So I've only been able to kind of see at a high level what it can do, but it's really impressive what I've seen so far. And it reminds me of some of the older platforms, because you're right, a lot of them today, Facebook's ad manager and the Meta Business Suite is really challenging to use and to get the information you want out of it. Mm-hmm. TikTok is like a breath of fresh air, where you really get to the metrics you're looking for and you get to them easy. So speaking of TikTok, I know you're just crushing it on TikTok. You managed to generate, did I get this right, 30 million organic views on TikTok in 6 months?
Yeah.
How do you balance doing that kind of viral content creation with actual revenue driving activities?
It is hard because, like we were saying earlier with the vanity metrics, like it's such a serotonin boost to see that video go viral, you're like refreshing the page all the time, like, oh my god, like it's so exciting. But you do have to balance it out if you're going to balance what you're doing in terms of brand awareness with what actually the business needs to, like the bottom line essentially. So in terms of balancing that out, I think the main thing is to create a strategy, like a segmentation for your posts. So having that mix of kind of like entertaining, educational, and promotional posts, and understanding as well that those promotional posts are probably not going to have that instant serotonin boost that a viral, entertaining video might have, but they could potentially have more of an impact when it comes to conversions and revenue. It's all about testing and learning as well. So analyzing which viral trends are aligning with your audience's interests. So I have really fun conversations I'm in like various WhatsApp groups and LinkedIn chats about the struggles of social media managers. And one of the things is, how do you, with all these kind of like interest days, how do you decide what you're going to actually put out? And we had a really funny conversation about, well, I'm not going to have anything for National Hot Dog Day because that just doesn't, why would I? It doesn't align. But you see maybe some brands say, oh, it's National Coffee Day. Well, why are you posting this? You're not a barista, or you're not like Starbucks or whatever. So it's all about understanding how these days align with your or days or trends align with your social media interest or your audience interests, and not understanding that you don't have to get on every trend. And then we measure KPIs for both those engagement, viral content, and the conversion, so promotional content as well. Yeah, it's difficult to balance out, but you've got to do it. Otherwise, you'll be running around like headless chicken, trying to keep on top of all the trends that come out all the time.
That's such a huge point. There are so many trends, memes, sporting events, and then to your point, national days. There's something every day that day is for multiple things for most days. National Donut Day and so on. Yeah, brands don't need to try to take advantage of each one of those. We're talking mostly to retail social media managers here, so you folks can certainly think creatively and look for opportunities to leverage a day like that and make it one of those interactive, engaging, potentially viral moments, but not every day and not every trend. So I know that a lot of the folks that are listening may be struggling to prove their value to their leadership. That lady that I mentioned, before we took a break, who worked for Briola, she was tracking through UTM parameters every single link that they were sharing because she wanted to be able to demonstrate the value of her work and her team's work. Her boss wanted her to fire all of her virtual assistants who were helping her keep up with comments and demand and that sort of thing. And she used that tactic to actually track the fact that they were driving, I think it was 2,000 pounds a month it was 4,000 pounds a month in revenue, and it was costing them 2,000 pounds a month in fees, for those assistants. So she had that mindset. How would you advise other social media managers who are struggling to prove their value in these ways?
Yeah, so it's all about data. I get very bogged down in the data. I love a spreadsheet. I feel like detective when I'm looking at it, because I really want to know like the why of why has this thing gone viral? Why have so many people landed on our website this month? So it's all about data. You can't really argue with that. So like we were saying earlier, presenting that data effectively in a way where where you can present to your leadership, this is the actual impact, and you can't argue with that because these are the facts. It's data. Like, I think that's just step one, really. It's a winner.
Yep.
So you have to show how that engagement drives things like traffic, leads, or sales. again, you might have to educate leadership a little bit, explaining the importance of what you're doing, of like things like brand awareness and community building, because it can seem, I guess, a bit wishy-washy if you can't present the data on how that is actually driving things that they care about. You could, I guess, use case studies on a campaign that you've just run, with like those real life examples of how a campaign that you've run has affected business growth or whatever your goal is. And then, yeah, you can like focus on incremental wins as well. So you should be like highlighting the short-term successes while also working on those long-term goals as well. I just wanted to point out briefly, so things like the engagement feeling a bit wishy-washy. Do you have a case study for that? So obviously we get quite a few viral videos on TikTok. We've worked out a way that we can kind of not predict, because that would be virtually impossible, but a way that we know that that's going to resonate with our audience. And so one of the viral videos that we had was using one of our most popular products. It's called a Tough Tray paper pad, and is essentially like a massive hexagonal piece of paper, but it slots really nicely into these trays, and teachers like to use them. So we used this video, ended up generating millions and millions of views on TikTok, which was lovely. There's that serotonin boost.
Right.
But it also, we managed to get 26 sales of the product, and we could attribute that to TikTok via Google Analytics. So it's important to have those tools in place as well. And again, probably there's the UTM tags to show where those customers have come from, what their journey is. And yeah, because of the ability to attribute those sales to TikTok, you can then demonstrate the impact of social media as a whole.
Fantastic advice. I couldn't agree more with starting with data. But I love how, I mean, earlier you talked about having that narrative when you're presenting the report, right? And that's exactly what a case study can do. It can help somebody understand through storytelling what it is that we actually accomplished in a very tangible way. And that might not necessarily mean sales, but that might be, impacting our target audience and creating relationships and that sort of thing. All that's really powerful through storytelling. Katie, I just got one more question for you. I'd love if you could share for the folks listening, who are some of the other folks that you're following, that you're paying attention to, thought leaders, so to speak, to help us stay current with social media? I mean, we talked a moment ago about how there's new channels coming up all the time. We've covered a lot of measurement, best practices. Who are you following to keep up with these kinds of things?
Yeah, so I think in terms of people, I'm in a fair few like LinkedIn, not groups necessarily, but I follow quite a few people on LinkedIn. I think that's one of the best places to reach people and keep current, because people really go for it on, like, if something happens, they're just on it. So people like Sophie Miller from Pretty Little Marketer and Annie Mae Hodge from Girl Power Marketing. Annie is specifically amazing because every week she comes out with these brilliant rundowns of everything that's happened in social media that week, like what's new in terms of algorithmic changes, platform changes, campaigns that are running. She's just excellent. So people like that are great to follow. I read blogs, like quite like the Hootsuite blog. I also like the Sprout Social blog as well. And then just like to keep up with webinars quite a lot, and real life events I go to frequently, because then you're connecting with people in your field as well, who might be in like a completely different field to you, but you'll always learn something from each other. So that's how I try and stay up with the ever changing field of social media.
Could not agree more. In fact, it was at a in-person event, Social Media Day B2B Forum in London about a year ago that I got to meet Annie Mae, and we hung out. I adore her. We played putt-putt golf in the middle of that event. It was phenomenal. But to your point, she is terrific. All those people and blogs that you mentioned are terrific. We'll link to those in the show notes. But Katie, you've been phenomenal. This has been such a great interview. For folks who want to learn more about you, or maybe want to follow up with some more questions or just connect, where should they go?
well, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit obsessed. But yeah, you can go to my LinkedIn page. And that's pretty much it. I think you can look at early years resources. We have a website. You can look at all our social medias, usually at early years resources, or in terms of places like Blue Sky, where you have a limited character for your username, it's early resources. But yeah, best to find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, all of you, for listening. We'll have all of Katie's links, everything in the show notes as usual. That's all the time we've got for today, but don't forget to find the Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition on Apple and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think. Until next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.